Welcome to another No video. I'm Chelsea Laliberte. I'm the Executive Director of Live for Lally, co-founder of the Lake County Opioid Initiative. I have a special guest today, obviously. This is Dennis Wichern. Dennis is the Special Agent in charge of the DEA in Chicago. And welcome.
Thank you, Chelsea. I joined DEA when I was 27. I always wanted to be in law enforcement, especially do drugs. I always had a yearning to be a public servant, but I also wanted to have fun and chase bad guys. And that's why I joined. I went to a lot of night school. Fortunately, I had good friends in high school, and I came up as a construction worker while I went to school at night. And I really enjoyed building things, but my dream was always to public safety and chase after bad guys. And so I have a big yearning to this day is to be a servant for the public.
Great. And you're not from here because you have a little twang, like a mini twang.
I got it. That's cool you say that. I grew up in Missouri, and I've worked in D.C., Missouri, Indiana, and in this great city now. And it's really funny when you work in D.C., everybody's got little twangs or different twangs.
Mm-hmm.
But I probably do have just a little strange Missouri twang the way I grew up.
Yeah. And so did you move your family out here and now you guys are just kind of based here? Or?
No, I got this great job at the end of my career. Previous to that, I've been married for 25 years. I got 2 daughters, and my plan was to get my daughters through high school before I took another move. But my plan worked so good, I got them almost all the way through college before I got this great opportunity. So they still work and live down in Indianapolis, Indiana, and then I commute up to Chicago on Monday and Friday. So I live in Indiana on the weekends.
You're like really busy.
It's a great job.
Yeah, it is. And so you've been doing this for a while, right?
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I guess I'm curious, like, what you look forward to being able to do in your role, because you're in charge of you're in charge of not just Illinois, but a lot of states, right?
All of Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and North Dakota, in addition to the northern part of Illinois.
Okay, so all of those are very demographically different.
Yes, they are.
It must be like, so what are you learning?
It's a little different in each state. In Indiana, it's a meth problem. In Chicagoland, it's heroin. In Minnesota, it's more of a meth problem. In North Dakota, is a little bit of everything. Wisconsin and Milwaukee are very similar to Chicagoland.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of parallels and similarities between those cities and states.
And like drug trafficking, right? Because you have like cross-border issues like that. Oh, that has to make your job very complicated sometimes.
I'm fortunate to have other, committed public servants, Chelsea, and it's like I've got some great sub-bosses, as I call them, and we communicate well, we share information well, and Chicagoland, because of its population and its location, is pretty much a hub for a lot of those other cities.
Right.
For drugs.
Wow. So what do you look forward to being able to do with your role? You said you're at the end of your career, but this is a big job and we're in the epidemic right now. What do you look forward to being able to try and do as leading this effort with the DEA in this area?
One thing, to save lives. Too many lives are lost to heroin. Too many lives are lost to painkillers. That is our number one goal. Yeah. And that's going to remain the number one goal till the day I walk out. It's like we're out there trying to save lives, so kids and young adults do not die from these drugs.
And now we're seeing this shift into like a lot of middle-aged and older population adults. Has your job kind of changed a little bit with that, or is this still the same strategy?
Pretty much the same strategy. If me and you were doing an interview 20 years ago, the drug game has always changed. And I often use my hand motion like a bell curve.
Right.
5 years ago or 10 years ago, we would be talking about ecstasy.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some people say, why is heroin back? Heroin never left. It's just a lot worse now. We were fighting heroin 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But the game's always going to change, and we have to adapt to the game so we're successful.
So, this war on drugs, as we call it, or some of us call it, has been going on for a very long time. Is it working, in your opinion?
I think it is, and here's the reasons why. People use that phrase, war on drugs. Drug abuse and addiction is just another social issue. We haven't beat poverty, we haven't beat homelessness, we haven't beat illiteracy, we haven't beat failing schools, we haven't beat a lot of American things. drugs. America's such a great nation. We used to have a great appetite for these drugs. But the other option is to legalize it all. And I'd argue, look at what heroin's doing now. Do we need more heroin legalized? We would never do that. So it's an ongoing battle. That definition of war on drugs, a lot of people use that. I'm not sure that's the right way. This is a social problem. We just got to continue to battle it. We haven't beat homicides. We haven't beat burglaries. We haven't beat murders. We haven't beat bank robberies. It's just one part of life we just got to continue to fight against.
But there's a lot of people who think that all of those are connected, and I, for one, think that the data is showing us that a lot of those issues that you've described really do link together.
Yeah.
So where's kind of the straw that hits the camel's back on that? Because what you're describing essentially, as you said, is social issues, people issues.
Right.
So these are issues that people naturally do. How do you regulate people? That's the greatest challenge.
Well, and that's where, myself and my other agents were investigators. Lawmakers make laws, and that's the best thing we have about America. Somebody else makes the law, then you have investigators or law enforcement trying to chase it down. I guess, but to answer that, when you think how much alcohol is costing in abuse and addiction and things like that, and some of these other drugs, do we really need to add to that? Because there's so many, how should I say it, the other ways that we could not save money, but it's like, do we really need to go down more of a road that we know could harm people and waste lives? I guess that's the way I argue.
Okay. That's a fair answer. I don't think, the sad thing is, I don't think that we have a lot of data that tells us here in America what's the perfect answer. We just have these conversations round and round and round, and I think what we see is that other parts in the world, for example, Portugal, let's just take Portugal,
right,
for example, has totally decriminalized drugs. You use drugs, you don't go to jail, you go in front of a mental health board and they try and shepherd you into a program that's appropriate for you. Do you think that could work here?
I'd have to leave that up to the lawmakers.
We're in the middle of this opioid epidemic, okay? We've got OxyContin, Vicodin, we've got all these painkillers that are Schedule II drugs, most of them.
Yes,
We've got heroin that's a Schedule I drug. And we've got 144 deaths a day, 2 overdose, 91 to opioids a day. And then you have marijuana, which is, we don't know that many people have died from marijuana, but it's still somehow a Schedule I drug. I get confused about this because for me personally, and the data I've read, don't see the relevancy. Can you shed some light on that?
I have two things the FDA decides, not DEA. Is it accepted medical use? And then does it have a high rate of abuse potential? Nowhere in the law is it dangerous. But you could say the abuse potential is danger.
So the FDA determines the usability, the viability of the drug, and then you at the DEA enforce it based on those recommendations, essentially.
That's exactly it.
Okay, so you're like second in line when it comes to making those choices. So ultimately, like you said before, it comes down to policy, correct?
Policy, that's the law. Let's say the law, but what I'd argue from the FDA when you look at it, and I can send you a great document, it comes down to science. The FDA people are the scientists, the researchers. It's science.
But it's fascinating, though, because what we've learned about this epidemic is that the science was wrong.
DEA only does the enforcement part, but we need the treatment people and the support people like your great organization, and we need the prevention and the education. That's the forgotten piece of this.
Yeah.
If we don't help those young kids in 5th or 6th grade now to give them the peer pressure tools and the other tools they need, we aren't going to beat this shit. All right? This generation, I know from the studies, you will fail 7-8 times before you beat heroin if you're able to beat it. Okay?
Right.
All right? Those are bad odds. We know that. We got to prevent the next generation.